taken under the association I'm Peace Ambassador with. And as this pathway is going on and evolving, my speeches that I'm going to give also in the future months, that will be changing slightly according to the news that I can bring in for these projects. So today I'm just sharing this experience. I want to tell you a little bit about what my association does and where it comes from, so to give you an insight on the background. And then I will describe 2 projects that we are working on at the moment. And finally, I will tell you about our manifesto, which is the core of our association, which is the principle that we carry on and that stand behind the projects. So to let you know that our projects are not just a practical activity, but they imply a very consistent and I would say meaningful philosophy behind it. And I'll try to be not too much boring to you. Anyways. Pardon me for the emotion, because this is the first time that I actually speak here in America. I held other speeches in Europe, but it's all different because the people change, their background is different. I was not raised in America. I was raised in Italy, and I came here 6 years ago, so I'm still learning the American way, their viewpoints and everything. So for me, and more than for you, it's a learning process. As I said, I was born and raised in Italy, and this association, Assisi for Peace TV, I'm part of since 2006. It was initially conceived as an organization for cultural and artistic purposes. I was invited in because at the moment I was learning about St. Francis' life and the actions. And I was told to write a presentation on St. Francis, and I got so much caught up into lives of St. Francis that I wanted to know more about what this association wanted to pursue in their mission. And I discovered about, first of all, the name itself, that it gave me a lot of insight of what these people wanted to do before I came in. And which is obviously Assisi is a key word where St. Francis lived and did most of his actions. And then for peace, because that's the main key word, the word that they wanted to spread following the religious and lay principles of St. Francis, which is obviously universal peace, universal love, and dialogue, intercultural and interreligious dialogue. These principles to me are very dear, because I always believed, even though I'm quite young, I've always believed during my traveling, like he said before, the gentleman, he said traveling all over the world gets you an insight of how people are, and that after all diversity is a richness, and they don't have to dismiss just because people have less and you have more, but they have to be respected. And nobody actually has less than you have, because there is a richness within us that is always there, no matter how many materialistic things we have. And I traveled a lot, and I had the same experience. So to me, universal love or peace, which is not so comfortable principle, that not so many people really like too much to speak about peace or to listen about peace nowadays, or they maybe do not have so much time. That's what I noticed, because our society, being so frantic and so fast as it is right now, doesn't really leave us enough time to talk or to think about what should we do to foster peace. Instead, what should we do to survive or to achieve our goals? But sometimes they don't go together with peace or dialogue. And this is the final part that I would like to stress out about our manifesto, about the individual consciousness. So, and then the TV part. So obviously the principle of peace and dialogue to me was very interesting. And then the TV, because we have in our website, assisiforpeacetv.com, this web TV that the board wanted to implement with contents. And originally they wanted to put conferences, speeches about different topics, as I said before, between human rights and spanning all over to peace and dialogue, and put it there on web TV, making the web TV just focused on those principles. And I thought that was a good idea, but then I proposed something different, and it would come to the second project, Project Faces, that's currently going on, and I'm going to explain in a few minutes. So these three words compose the association that I'm part of, and I was really, really eager to be appointed as a peace ambassador, even though, you know, as bombastic as it may seem, it's actually very simple. It's a very simple title. Each one of us can be a peace ambassador just by the very daily actions that we do, and it doesn't really take that much once you really tune up in what you are supposed to do in your daily life. Just by respecting each other, by respecting your co-workers, by respecting the environment you are in, you're already a peace ambassador. It doesn't take that much. It doesn't take any speech in front of people. It's just your life can be a testimony of what you do for peace. So now the two projects that we're working on, it's located in Assisi area, which is the territory between Spoleto and Gubbio, which we can talk as a Franciscan trail. It's not exactly a continuous trail, because over the years it was broken down in several pieces, and we don't know exactly in 800 years, 800 years ago, St. Francis where exactly did make what it did. But we know that it's an imaginary line between Spoleto and Gubbio, Mount Verna, and passing by Assisi and Perugia. So we identified 3 macro areas to build some Franciscan stations for pilgrims and tourists to come and visit the place where St. Francis lived and acted. And 3 macro areas are the southern Umbria, Spoleto, the central part, Assisi, and Perugia. Perugia as the city of a reawakening. When he was held prisoner after a battle, he was held prisoner for 2 years. He nearly died there. He must have probably gone through all sort of experiences in the dark side of life, and many other people died in the same place that he was held underground in a very small little cellar. And you can imagine, I mean, 800 years ago, what the condition. I visited the ground in Perugia where they claimed was the jail. And it's not even today, it's a good place to see anyways. But he survived after 2 years there, and when he got out again, he was a new person. As happens many times when you go through a very big drama, and you start to, either you die inside or you wake up, and he did. And then, so that part of Perugia will be the station for the reawakening. We try to match the historical part of St. Francis' life with some concepts that we can bring in with conference and seminars to put it together for the tourists. So it's going to be a project which comes together with the touristic interest and cultural interest with the spiritual pathway, trying to describe what he went through, and for whoever wants to experience the same thing, we'll provide some services. So this is the project that we're working on. Second macro area is Spoleto, which is the city of when he had the vision. So the city vision, when he had 2 visions, after he came out of prison, he still wanted to pursue his original mission. It was actually a desire to become a knight. And he wanted to join the Crusades that at the time they were taking off from southern Italy to Jerusalem. So he tried to go there, and in Spoleto he had to stop because he had 2 visions of a mighty voice just telling him, would you like to follow the servant or the master? And he answered the master. So the voice said, okay, so why are you following the servant? And the first and the second vision was a big, huge castle full of treasures. And those treasures were given to him and said, this is all yours. And he said, no, I do not want it. So after those 2 visions, his mind totally changed, and his body and spirit were already in the process of change, but he had to make up his mind. And those visions just triggered that. And he went back to Assisi, and then he had another vision. So this is a long term, because it takes a lot of efforts and connections with the local governments, and also I took some connections here and in Asia too, because we would like to foster foreigners to come to Umbria more than the locals. And obviously by this formula, we would like locals to benefit for this. And we're currently talking with the local government. It seems that it's a good start, and we may may have to start, maybe may have to implement this by 2013. Now, what I was thinking when I heard about this project, I wrote myself most of the contents together with the board, which is composed by professors and academics and theologians too. I was thinking this project is a long-term project, but we need something to attract people to this organization, what they do. So what could we do meanwhile this project is going on? And I thought about this project called FACES. I called it FACES, which is an acronym for Fostering Audiovisual Communication Through Educational Strategies, and involving kids. Following the manifesto and our principles, I was thinking, how can we make a huge impact to people towards certain critical concepts like human rights, peace, or dialogues? And I thought about the youngest generation of kids. That could be the future generation of leaders. They have so much to say, and you can tell every day of their lives by their very action, their innocence, their spontaneity, and the way they react to the world for how much chaotic it is. So I thought, why don't we try to select few schools all across the globe, have the kids speaking in front of the camera and delivering this message in front of the world leaders as if they're speaking to the world leaders. And they say, what is peace for them? What is dialogue or diversity? What is the things that strike them every day? You know, we are a multicultural, especially America, but Europe also and Asia is getting there at a multicultural society. So you have diversity everywhere. Sometimes you take it for granted, but it's not. Because you know very well that in the local communities, diversity is always present. For as much as we're blended together, we recognize the diverse. And it would be a pity to me if it wouldn't be like that. Because we need to treasure our diversity, which is the richness of humanity. We can, you know, the globalization, try to put everything together in a melting pot, in my opinion, didn't work well, especially from a human point of view. It did bring some advantages, but still, we have to hold on our diversities. Because this is how we evolve, and we learn from each other. And the children, in my opinion, that when I spoke to the board, I said they could bring the very core of this respect for diversity. And they could have a huge impact to the world leaders if we ever get them to watch it. Because they can't dismiss it. They cannot do anything. They have to respond to children. And I started to identify schools. I went to Asia 2 months ago. I found one in Indonesia, and I got the first 8 kids on a camera speaking in their own language, and all of them were really, really remarkable in the view they had about peace and about where the war is going. And then that moment, I really understood that probably was the way to go, that project could work. And then I had already been talking with an American school before going to Asia, and it was more difficult because you're aware of the problems that we have to put the children on the camera, unfortunately, because of our civilized society, how can exploit children online and all the problems that we have. So we cannot even afford to have this project lightly, because not of the children, but because of us adults, what we can do too. And it was very delicate, so I spoke, and thanks to Father Joe, who was here with me, and he helped me a lot on this. Finally, we got the attention of this school, and in September, we're going to shoot the second school here in America, first one, and to have this young kids just speaking. The association is that if we have 3 core schools all across the globe, we can get more schools coming over after this project is started, and we can get our objective is to have as many schools as possible to create a full package of video of kids speaking of the same subjects to the world leaders, and then the next step would be to get to the world leaders. For as crazy as it may seem, but we have to have always a different objective, always a bigger objective in order to have results. So that's a project also which is going on, Project Faces, and I'm very proud of it because for as much as we as adults we can bring into the society, I believe that is the people who in the future will build our society that must be aware of the responsibility they already have, even if they're so young, and even by just a simple speech towards their future. So I would welcome children more than adults to have this opportunity to speak in front of the camera. And between these two projects, there is another nice concept that was brought in by an Italian-American friend of mine, which is not here today, unfortunately. She's in San Francisco, Charlene Imperatrice. Last year, we were talking about a way to unite environment and peace, environment being another key concept that we are obviously related to St. Francis, to his territory and everything, that we would like to develop. And she taught me, when I was in Italy a few years ago, I thought about building a peace garden, like a green oasis, when we could have busts of peacemakers and a little trail where people can go visiting, and each bust would be dedicated to a peacemaker that across the world dedicated his life to peace. So I said, okay, why don't we do the first one in Assisi then and dedicate it to St. Francis? It seemed to me just clicking in. And she loved Assisi, and she agreed, so we started to work on that too. And now that we would like to fit this peace garden, we already found the land. It was donated by the honorary president of my association. We have the land in Val Fabrica. Val Fabrica is a small tiny village just outside Assisi, where St. Francis went right after he renounced to his wealthy and his father and everything. He fled Assisi and he went to Val Fabrica to take shelter by his friend. So there, in that very land, very close, there is a little church dedicated to him. We're going to have the peace garden. Peace garden, and then we took to the next level, which is not just having a garden with busts. I said we should have this bust, people be able to listen about this peacemakers biography, so maybe we could put all sort of headset and wireless, and to make it technological and try to harmonize environment with technology, and having the young students to come in and study, since there are like 6-7 months a year that it's a good weather there in Italy, and it's very pleasurable to stay outside in Umbria and study and so forth. So, and I spoke in this fashion to the local government, and this probably will happen too along the way. So now we have outlined 3 different things: the cultural and artistic aspect with the Franciscan station, the spiritual part, and the environmental part. And all these topics would be part of seminaries and conferences where speakers from all over the world would be invited to talk and to intervene. And this is also another cross-country and cultural opportunity for academics or speakers to meet in such a mystical land, which is Umbria, obviously. And it will benefit also the locals. So we try just to balance between the spiritual and the touristic place without not being too commercial, not being too abstract. So this is the thing, the correct balance, and it's not that easy, but that's really our objective. What is behind this project? Why do we want to pursue this in this fashion? We have started by conceiving a manifesto, which is our core philosophy for what we are doing and the project that we are going to undertake after this or during these 2 projects. Our manifesto can be read, well, actually, now it exists only in Italian version, but soon will be ready also in an English version. It basically tells where we stand now. What is the situation of our global society? Okay, the main problem is that we are so busy to achieving our goals that sometimes we have no way to have an interval that, like the creation of the psychiatry and when it was discovered the subconscious and what everything was put inside this unknown, strange, untamable thing that we have inside, bringing down the consciousness to a pure instinct and not to a rational path that we can actually control. So we took off from there and said, okay, that's true, but what we should be doing, we should develop a consciousness by which each individual take full responsibility for the actions they do and stop saying or blaming something that is uncontrollable. It's a variable, it's something that exists, but is not the only thing. What we need to be held accountable for is that we are irrational beings and our actions are conscious. We need to take responsibility for that. How do we raise our consciousness? Obviously, like the projects, what's behind it, it's a harmony, it's a balance. We have to acknowledge what we don't control, and we have to acknowledge what we can control. And these harmonies, we say there are three different harmonies. There's harmonies with ourselves, harmonies with the other, and harmonies with the environment, which is the most beautiful expression of God, what we have around us. If we can harmonize these three variables, we believe we can enhance our consciousness and our awareness of what we really are, and thus we can embrace our community in a broader way, in a more peaceful way. Once you are fully conscious of what you are, you're not really so likely to be violent to the other or to harm the other. Sometimes violence, it comes from the insecurity, from loneliness, or from other instincts that you think you cannot control. But if you try, or there is what we call the intentio veritas, the intention to the truth, something that maybe we never achieve, but it's attention to. It's like an urge towards. So this intention, this motus, this motion that we have towards something that we believe is the truth, although we can never achieve, these can make us feel more conscious of what we are and where we're going. It doesn't matter whether we can really achieve or not, because along the way there is life. And every step of our life that we undertake, it's always an achievement. It doesn't matter if we never get there. The important is that we want to get there. And then on the way through, all our experiences will lead us to a comprehension of what we are. So that's where we take off from. And it actually, well, we're not saying anything new. We're not teaching anything new. It's just something that we really embrace, which is the responsibility of each individual towards its community and its ultimately the society, without thinking, okay, we're just a part of a whole and I cannot distinguish myself from the whole, which is basically globalizing philosophy. No, we would like to go back to the individual and say we need to learn by ourselves with the others, being aware that we are what we are. And there is a reason. We are our story, we are our life, we can share with others, but it's still us. That's me. There's not me and the others. That's me first, blending into the others in a harmonious way. This is what's behind this project and CC for Peace TV. And I am still working with my board to have a better understanding of how we can blend this without sounding too much extreme on this side, how we can blend it in a concrete project, then we can show to people what we really mean by this. Because when you get into philosophy or some abstract principles, it's always very difficult to explain, okay, but where is the truth? I mean, you say this and somebody else would think different. It works. It works anyways. As long as it works for you, it's okay. But then we have to have our outcomes in the society and see where are we going. Our societies, can we consider it in a good shape? Do we think that we learn from our experiences, or maybe we should, like experiment new windows or new possibilities? And this, obviously, there's no answer, although I have my own opinion, but everybody has. And doing that, hopefully, by believing in balance and harmony between oneself, the others, and the nature, so ultimately God, we can bring in some balance that can better our society. So, how much time do I have? 10 minutes. Okay, so 5 minutes more just to okay, what I would like to share, just since I'm here in America, and I'm very grateful that I've been given this opportunity to speak to an American audience, and we will see what the comments will be, and then it will help me also to, let's say, adjust my aim to understand how much was I able to communicate to you and what did you process, and obviously by your comments also I'll be learning more about my if I was able to deliver the correct message or not. So this sharing is, I was in Asia 2 months ago, and I could speak with some officials there and some people there in Indonesia, especially Indonesia, being a very spiritual country as it is. Then I spoke in Europe and I spoke here now. I have an understanding that my message try to be the same, but obviously the reaction from people is different according to their cultural background. They believe, and what they believe, which is already injected in your mind, and absolutely must be so, because that's what shapes you as a human beings. When I speak in a simpler way to children, and I want to stress this difference because ultimately it's what it's all about. We are talking about two different generations. We are talking about people who in the future would be us, would take our responsibilities, and probably would take off in a better way than we did right now. And I know that the attention they can give to me, I understand exactly some principles they do not have, but they're very intelligent and receptive on one thing, which is believe what you are. If you ever want to get there in life, you want to evolve and improve, keep believing what you are. No matter how many experiences you go through, how many failures, it's all part of life. Never give up on your highest target and goal that you have. So this is what really, really I like to give to them. And it seems that they know already. That I'm not saying anything new. They know it. Say, of course. I mean, the kids just keep fantasizing, but actually their fantasy is their reality at that moment. So what they fantasize about is actually they truly believe that will happen until they become adults, and then they stumble into the first wall, second wall, third wall, and then their fantasy fades away, and they say, okay, welcome to reality. Okay, that change is a deep crisis, and then when you say welcome to adulthood. If we can retain a little bit of our spontaneity when we want to reach dreams, and those dreams are our reality, then maybe we can find a better way to the harmony and to the balance and create a better society. I think that's it. I would like to just to welcome a few questions if anybody has one. And
good morning. Okay, good. It's wonderful to have you here. Really appreciate your comments. And I think getting to the children and helping to influence and shape them is a great way to go. Clearly, the children end up raised by the adults, and that's where the problem comes into play. To be more specific, in terms of respecting cultural diversity, let's take the Middle East, where in many cultures, women are viewed not just as second-class citizens, but as third- or fourth-class citizens. What would you say about that? How do you view that? How does does your group view that? Should we respect that cultural diversity?
My view of respect is when we hold a similar harmony. We are still human beings, no matter if we are Middle East or Americans or Asians. But when a human being violates another human being space or rights or liberty or freedom, then the respect must fall. It doesn't mean that obviously I do not respect them, and it doesn't mean that I have to give up on them. There is a way, there must be a way, because we're not talking about rocks or inanimate matter. We're talking about human being, living beings. So there must be something wrong that we can right. And we have to work on that. Obviously, it's unimaginable, and I cannot stand by just see what you're just saying. It's obviously not respectable. It's impossible to respect such a thing. But it doesn't mean that you have to treat with the same violence or with the same thing. You have to understand. And I would say one more thing. By trying to right wrongs, it doesn't mean either to push them to bring our way to them, because that's another wrong thing. Because you push them to extreme, and you make them angry, and by retaliation, they would just keep doing it, just out of disrespect for what you're doing to them. So the right way would be try to understand their cultural background. Having someone there who doesn't back up that behavior, and there are many in the Middle East who don't like that, and try to work with them to find out where is in their cultural background, respecting their background, we can right the wrongs. But we cannot possibly imagine to bring our model there as it is and force it through. It wouldn't work.
Thank Thank you very much. This has been very enlightening. I'm curious if I have this concept right. You talk about these three stages, and you talk about following this path, and I'm wondering if you are trying with these tourists, are you trying to get them to a place or show them a place where they move into that that place where they have an awakening, where they understand the dark night of the soul? Is this process, I don't know if these buses are going to these three places with a spiritual journey in mind, or just as tourists, or?
Okay, well, first of all, we cannot force a spiritual awakening to people. Not even the spiritual awakening can occur in a specific place. Spiritual awakening is something that it's already in you, and it can happen anytime, anywhere. What we're offering, following the principle of St. Francis, we're offering people knowledge about where St. Francis was born and what he did there. When somebody does something really remarkable for a community, he spreads some kind of energy, a mystical vibration that holds in that territory, okay? And there are many places in the world where you can go and see and feel the goosebumps, and you say there and say, this place is magical. It doesn't mean that you can have a spiritual awakening there, but it certainly can be an experience. What we're offering is like an experience that you have to visit those places, to attend some conferences and topics that maybe you're interested into. And then of course, there would be meditation and prayers and everything. So it's like a package through which you can blend into the culture and artistic way, but it doesn't mean that it's better. Actually, do not expect any spiritual awakening, because the more you expect, the less it occurs. So it's just better to go open-minded, open-hearted, to discover the places, enjoy the beauty of the nature, and then wherever you're going to have your awakening, even if it's on your way back here on plane or on your home, still that it's a part of your baggage of experience. You have to hold it and treasure it.
May I ask, what are the age group, are the ages of the children that you've been interviewing?
Okay, that's a very good question, because initially I wanted, for what he said about the children being raised by adults, I wanted them to be as young as possible, so that for how much the parents raise them, they still hold that direct connection with God without being so much, let's say, polluted or educated. So I wanted spontaneity. But unfortunately, I was advised that too young an age couldn't be so appropriate when you speak to the world leaders. So they had to have at least, so we decided on a compromise between 9 and 12, 13.
And I think that's, I was curious because I think that's a good observation, and because the children have such an innocence, and it's a beautiful thing, and we have lost a lot of it, and so to be reminded, even at that young age, is beautiful. Yet I think that group, 9 to 12 to 13, 14, they're out here. It's scary, the war, and I think those comments and what they think, they're close enough to their childhood, yet they aren't totally immersed into more age. So I think that's great. Thanks.
Yeah, we believe that too.
I'm interested in two things. One, have you identified the other people who will have the bus of the other peacemakers? And then I know this is very general, but can you say anything about St. Francis and his open heart and how he may have gotten there, kind of as an inspiration? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, we have a list of peacemakers, and I can just say some names could be obviously the Buddha, Gandhi, Mother Teresa. There are like some so-called almost divinized peacemakers and more simple, like Martin Luther King, but not so simple. That's why we put it all together. It could be Christ, could be St. Francis, obviously, and then we want to, there is, for example, right now, an organization in Nepal who wants to make a peace garden. and I'm working with that organization too, and they want to dedicate to their local peacemaker, and they are giving me some history of what he did in Nepal, and so we're open to a list of potential peacemaker. Of course, there can't be too many. We're envisioning about 15, because the area of the Peace Garden may vary, depending on the land that we can get, but the formula should be the same, so we try to be consistent. It's still going, but yeah, certainly we have some big, like, peacemaker that did something for a large community, like religions or local peacemakers. And to answer the second question is, well, that's difficult, because I've read all that could be possibly be written by St. Francis. The sources, the official sources and books, probably I've read more than 20 or 30 books. And what I found out is that the church at that time tried to hide the true deeds of St. Francis, the true lives of St. Francis, because some of what he did, for example, just going to Egypt by himself without the church's permission and go to speak with the Sultan, try to convert the Muslim, basically, that's something that a church couldn't admit, and try to always to dismiss it or lowering to make a very, very low profile, and instead highlighting the fact that St. Francis was operating with, talking with animals and making just minor things, not really so minor, but anyways, not so cross-cultural, okay, something related to the territory. Certainly he was one of the closest human being to the principles of Christ in the history of humanity. The one who really truly followed what Christ said, especially about love your enemy. He tried to take it by the letter. And it implied so many sacrifices, not only of himself, but the friars that would send over. And that's how a lot of martyrs just came up. So he truly believed that that was the right things to do. And I'm nobody to say it was not. But certainly he had such a spiritual conviction that through that sacrifice, he could generate a big universal energy that could benefit the future of humanity, the same thing as Christ did. By the sacrifice of one or few, you generate that big wave of energy that this future generation can benefit from. So I believe that that was his core mission. In fact, when he got the big no by the Sultan to convert into the Christianity, but he made it out alive anyways, but he went back to Umbria, and he felt that his mission was a complete failure. And then he retired to a big meditation in Mount Verna, and he had the vision of the angel who told him something about his future that we don't know, and we know that he got the stigmata and then he died. So what I mean by this is that maybe his physical mission was a failure, and he as a human being was still limited to that failure. But his legacy and his message survived for so many years that even right now, St. Francis, what type of icon is it? So I would say that his mission, his inner mission, was a complete success.
Thank you very much. I'm guessing you say you film children in Southeast Asia. A lot of Southeast Asia is Muslim. I'm guessing that these are not Muslim children that you interviewed, I guess. But it would be interesting to see the dreams and the hopes for peace that Muslim children around the world have, and I wonder if you've investigated that as well. And would you share what country?
I try to go to, well, first thing you have to know that those countries, especially, I'm not saying there are hostile countries. Indonesia is quite friendly, but when you get into certain topics, like I went to Vietnam and I was not allowed to speak about human rights in Vietnam, just to make it clear, because it would be too risky. And I was in Indonesia, and before I go, obviously, I made sure that I was safe and I could go wherever I was allowed to. I mean, I can't just go like a martyr, it's impossible. So I tried to speak with the Muslim council, and I tried to speak with a couple of Muslim schools. It was very hard to get into it. In one occasion, I went into it, and I didn't receive a no, but I received a polite come back later, so which was a no. But I will come back. I mean, there's no doubt about it. In my mind, there's no doubt that I'm going to get all religions on a camera. It's just that sometimes you need to play smart, need to wait, be patient. So first I went for the easiest way, fastest way to get something out there. And then slowly but slowly, I could speak with a couple of ambassadors in Indonesia, and I tried to get to someone to get the attention of. That's all about that. Then when you get the attention from the adults, and some other doors open, and maybe it's easier. But yeah, it's not that one is not easy. No, there is a lot of diffidence, and it's also because of us and because of the attrition that there is between the two cultures still, unfortunately.